The preaching movement's been building up over the years, and we have established a routine, and it's a routine that required several meetings over several months. So we've taken a bit of a different approach to many other areas of the world. So we were actually meeting for 8 months in a row, but on the first Saturday in the morning. So the idea was that in between, the preaching clubs would cement what they had learned together. Now, COVID totally demolished that. And what it does is, because our program is sort of annual, it throws everything out. So we can't just start off with brand new 3-day sessions. For example, we had a short window of about 2 months, I guess, where lockdown was eased. And if our regular model was a 3-day session or a 3-day, I don't know what you'd call it, seminar, we could have squeezed one in. But because our basic model is so different, we weren't able to do that. And so the lockdowns really hammered us hugely, just in terms of the practical issues of meeting together. And I'm sure Gary and Vere would add other aspects that have been complicated by the lockdown. But that, I think, would be a starting point, that we haven't been able to do our regular meetings at all, even during the 2 months or so of the eased lockdown.
I'm the preaching club coordinator for Zimbabwe. And because our preaching clubs are a sort of a spin-off or a way of cementing the teaching in our monthly meetings together, because we didn't have those meetings, we didn't really have anything to do, in a way, for the preaching clubs. Because the preaching club would build on the session before. And so, yeah, we got smashed as well in terms of preaching clubs, because, yeah, the model just didn't fit in with it. And also, I think we've all been sort of thinking, well, this can't go on forever, can it?
It has.
And so, at some point, we're going to be able to get back together again. I think there's also a characteristic here in Africa where people love people. Our people are very people orientated. And the idea of doing something on WhatsApp, or even on a Zoom thing like this, where you can see each other and stuff, is not very attractive. And we have found people just going, and no, I want, surely we'll be able to get together face to face and give each other a hug and a handshake, or something like that. And so, even though we've tried to keep things going online, it hasn't really happened because of that just lack of human contact. And also, one of the things we're going to talk about today is, of course, the expense of it. Everybody in Zimbabwe has 2 cell phones. I mean, that's sort of a statistic for Zimbabwe. There are more cell phones and more mobile cell numbers than people in Zimbabwe. But it's very expensive in terms of data. And yeah, it's not high in world standards, but in terms of the income of the people of Zimbabwe, 80% of our people are unemployed. 60% of our people are considered to be living below the poverty datum line, which is $1 a day. And so then if you've got to buy a bundle that's going to cost you a couple of US dollars, 2 US, 5 US, it's a lot of money. It's like a week's earnings to just get a bundle to connect online. And so we've really struggled to get people online and working on it.
Vere has been responsible for our outreach work. So we've been meeting in Harare and Bulawayo, our 2 main cities, but Vere has been trying to look at other cities and towns where we can actually start meeting. And Vere, I don't know if you'd like to comment on, the impact, the very obvious impact of the lockdown on that.
Thank you, John. As one who is in charge of outreach, Langham outreach into other cities, the lockdown we found ourselves in the lockdown that we had a travel ban. And so you couldn't travel out of Harare. There were a lot of roadblocks here and there. And therefore it meant that our expansion project was stalled. So yeah, it has been, we are where we were in 2020, the beginning of 2020 in terms of outreach. We needed to start work in smaller towns like Bindura. We wanted to do something in Chinoi. We wanted to do something in Kadoma. We also wanted to we did a pilot project in rural Mashingo in a place called Gutu, but all that stopped because of the lockdown. And the fear of, the reality of COVID also didn't help it in terms of even the local. We couldn't do anything locally because we also are aware that this is real. It's not something that we can just shrug off and say, let's go against the rules and just meet, or we'll try to do A, B, C, D to control it. And also the uncertainty that was brought in by COVID and the restrictions is that it's very difficult for you to plan when you don't know what tomorrow holds. So in a way, the Langham team, thanks to John, who kept on speaking about Langham, otherwise there was really nothing going on, I would say. Very little, I would say, was going on. And it was more to try the online through an initiative through Harare Theological College called Chatterbox. And this is something that we're working on, which we think we would want to use going forward, even in our outreach program. Like Gary said, the network is a problem in Zimbabwe, one. Number two, the data bundles, also a problem, especially for our rural communities. It's very difficult to have people who can be online, who can afford to do so. Not only do we have 80% who are unemployed, but we also have a 20% which is employed, but which is being paid below what they should get for them to earn a living. So it's actually not a living wage for those who are working. So there are those struggles we to bear with, and some lost their jobs because of the lockdown as well, which could have helped them to either fund for the data bundles. So this is where we are in terms of our outreach program with Langham.
I want to quickly mention, pick up something that Verengerai said, and it's one of the, I think, the exciting possibilities here in Zimbabwe. Harare Theological College have developed what they've called the Chatterbox, which is I'm going to have to use a little bit of technical language and hope people might follow it up. It's a Moodle box, and a Moodle box is essentially a Raspberry Pi computer, which is a mini computer about the size of a cigarette packet, which is loaded with the Moodle learning management system. And they've developed it so that it is attached to a solar panel and is completely independent of both electricity and internet, because it generates its own intranet. And then what they've done is they've loaded on that the courses from Harare Theological College. Now, because of our good relationship with them, we've also loaded the full level 1 Langham Preaching course with video and the manual sort of embedded in that. So theoretically, wherever that Chatterbox unit is in the country, the Langham Preaching course is available. And at the moment, HTC, they've done about 20 of these Chatterboxes. They're being slowly distributed. They're still learning. But that would be something to pray about. If we can get a facilitator, and they don't actually need to be more than just a facilitator. As long as they're a reasonably intelligent person who can grasp ideas, they can go through the Langham course on the Chatterbox with another group and do level 1 Langham training. Now, the quality is assured because it's all the videos, the teaching, and the manuals available. The second thing is that Vere and I are in the process of sort of piloting a WhatsApp version of our level 1. So we found a way to hugely minimize the video. So we have is it, how many videos is it? It's 18 maybe, something like that, maybe about 18,
Yes.
15-minute videos, which are all WhatsApp size. So they're about 12 megabytes each. And we're seeing whether we can do the Langham training via WhatsApp, because WhatsApp is fairly ubiquitous in Zimbabwe. I think Gary and Vere would agree. So that would be a second matter of prayer. My pilot project is not going particularly well, but we would love this to succeed, because again, it just expands the possible footprint of Langham Preaching.
When thinking about data and communication here in Zim, we get 3G in the main cities, but in the rural areas, you sometimes don't even get data access. You know, you guys are thinking about 5G and it's national, and it's, you can go out into some cities, small cities, go out into the rural areas, and you get what we call edge, which is about half a G, if that. There's almost no access to data. So that's another thing to just consider. Not much we can do about that. Look, on the preaching club sides, we're beginning to try, our lockdown restrictions have been relaxed. We're allowed small gatherings of up to 50 people if they're church-based. And so we're beginning to try and encourage our preaching club coordinators to re-engage their preaching clubs. We haven't met since 2019. So there's a big gap. But to see if we can get them back in and meeting again. It's been quite interesting in this last week. They've been engaging with their people, and quite a few of them have said, we can't, if we're going to do this, we can't do it online. We just don't have the data, et cetera, et cetera. We need to meet in person. So, again, to pray for wisdom for the preaching club coordinators, pray for protection. If the groups start meeting in person, COVID hasn't disappeared. They're going to have to abide by all the protocols, and some of them are expensive. And we're going to have to walk with them through that journey. What we do in those preaching clubs is something I'm not quite sure, because again, we're not meeting as Langham Preaching and then spinning off into small groups. We have to create a small group program for each level. We've got 3 levels, 1, 2, and 3. And so we're going to have to cater a program for each of those levels and create it from fresh, because there's no basis to start from. So pray for that process as that now begins to happen. Hopefully we'll get these small groups going, and then when we relaunch the main group, they will become the foundation for that.
I just wanted to add on the facilitators side, especially on our outreach, that pray that we would find facilitators or willing hearts who are willing to be trained to become facilitators in the neighboring cities and in our rural communities, so that even if it is using the chatterbox, or it's doing some in-person meetings, or it's preaching club coordination, we will have people so that we don't need to travel from the big city to go and be facilitators there. But maybe that from time to time, we would just meet with the facilitator teams, either online or physically, but they will be the ones that will be growing the movement in their respective places.
We've just retranslated a new version of our level 1 into Shona, which is one of our national languages. And we've not done that yet into Ndebele, which would be our second largest indigenous language. So we really should be doing that. So as a matter of prayer, that would be helpful.
What Vere was saying earlier is so true. The people here are financially really stressed. that we can continue to provide this, continue to look after ourselves, continue to translate with our own resources. I mean, we should all be trying to be self-sufficient. So that's something that we aim for. It's gotten harder and harder. I know 2019 was quite tough financially as Langham Zimbabwe. You know, we do charge for the seminars and things like that, and people really struggled to even pay the small amount that we were asking for.
We're so very grateful to people who pray for us. It's just overwhelming and so thoroughly appreciate it. So please express that. If you're going to add one thing to this thing or put one thing in, please make sure you put our thanks.